Hello and welcome to episode 22 of Can We Still Be Friends, a podcast that tests the limits of the friendship between two people who mistake movie taste for personal morality. I'm Nate Goss, here with Ryan Ebling. Alejandro Iñárritu's recent Best Picture winner, Birdman, told the story of an actor played by Michael Keaton who is trying to prove that he is more of an artist than his career-making superhero movies made him out to be. The concept plays heavily on Keaton's own career, which inspired us to choose 1989's Tim Burton blockbuster, Batman.
Burton's Batman was a huge cultural phenomenon when it came out. Batmania was inescapable, with nearly every product and food item imaginable tying into the franchise. It earned over $251 million at the box office, and for a while it looked like it was going to break the all-time record. Critics were not blown away. It has a 66 on Metacritic, but it totally changed the concept of how summer blockbusters are produced and marketed. Some claim it is solely responsible for the prominence of superhero movies over the last 25 years, but how does Batman hold up after all this time?
Does Batman still bring that smile to our faces?
Or will we wish we had kept the VHS in the drawer with our Batman underwear?
Ryan, are you ready to dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?
Let's do it.
Batman. Can somebody tell me what kind of a world we live in where a man dressed up as a bat gets all of my press? This town needs an enema.
All right, so that was the Joker letting us know we all need a good enema every now and then.
Public service announcement from
exactly.
Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, we are doing 1989's Batman. So yeah, it's been a while since we recorded. I was dealing with some type of stomach flu. You got a truck.
I got a truck. Yeah.
So a lot's happened since.
A lot has
we were pretty
changed.
busy. Yeah, but
I've just been spending a lot of time staring at my truck.
But anyways, we are still, even though we are now into March, the Oscars have come and gone quite a ways away, actually.
Yeah.
But we are still sort of...
well, we're pulling from the Best Picture winner. It's not like we're pulling from some, I don't know, very obscure nomination.
We're talking about Birdman, by the way.
Right.
And so you might or may not have seen it, but you might see it around now. And it really does, as we said in our intro, play a lot off. There's a lot of meta things going on in that movie. And one of which definitely being the fact that Michael Keaton, the star of that movie, played Batman originally in this movie we're going to discuss.
Right.
And which I personally have not seen for a very long time, up until this episode. I don't know about you.
Well, which I hadn't seen for a long time. I saw it, when did I see it for the first time? Probably within the last 10 years.
Okay.
Was the first time I saw it. And then I actually rewatched it this summer.
Any reason?
I was just going through a bunch of old blockbusters.
Oh, okay.
The Dissolve put up that list of the best blockbusters, and that was on there.
Do you remember where it was on that list? Was it high up there, or was it pretty far down?
Yeah, it was ranked 35 out of 50.
Okay.
So in the lower half of their list.
But it made the list.
It did.
Nonetheless.
It made the list. Yeah, which is why I watched it.
But it's interesting that had you seen the movie the first time you watched it, had you already been, like, was the Nolan franchise your initial Batman viewing experience and not the Tim Burton one? Or did you see it just right up before that one?
Yeah. Movies. I mean, I watched the TV show as a kid a ton.
The animated series?
No. Well, yes.
Or the Adam West?
Both. The Adam West and the animated series. But cinematically, yeah, Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins was the first one that I had seen.
Okay.
But it was around then.
Of those our age, that's actually not too common to where you would have seen Batman Begins and not have any frame of reference of Tim Burton's Batman before that. So
yeah. That is odd.
Yeah.
But that's my childhood. There's a lot of movies I wasn't allowed to see. I mean, in fairness, I was 5 when it came out, and PG-13, right? So,
well, I didn't see it in the theater.
So it's odd to maybe be talking about this because it was such a part of your childhood. I didn't see it, but I still loved all the stuff. Like, I loved Batman and I loved the toys and I loved everything about Batmania.
And we were almost probably Batman fanatics but from coming from two very polar opposite places, because you being a comic book fan and me never really even reading a comic book until I was an adult, and me coming at it from someone who only knew the movies and just loved the movies, and that's what made me love Batman. So we both liked Batman, and liked that sort of fanaticism of the time, but for two very different reasons.
Right. Yeah.
This is a movie that is very dear to me as a child, even though I didn't see it in the theater. I saw Batman Returns in the theater, and that had just as much hype around it, I think, as Batman did. Maybe not as much, but it still, I remember, was like the movie event of that summer. I believe 92 or 93. And and that's when I just jumped in wholeheartedly into Batman and loved it. Had all the action figures. I had trading cards. I had for Batman Returns, I even had the that when they put out those movie like fan magazines.
Oh yeah.
And I would just like flip through that thing, and it just had stills from the movie. Yeah. I just loved reading through that, you know.
See, by the time Batman Returns came out, I was reading a ton, and I knew everything about Batman Returns. Like I looked at pictures, I like read all about it, and I knew all about Catwoman and Penguin. And I mean, I didn't know about the plot of the movie or anything, but like
it didn't matter. When you're that age,
right?
It really doesn't matter.
So I was that was something that's kind of funny about my childhood. There were all these movies that I wasn't old enough to see, or we just didn't see for whatever reason. But I knew everything about them.
Yeah.
So like, people could talk about movies and I would just like be able to jump into the conversation. But then I would have to be like, what was it like in that part where this? And I'd describe like a picture, because like that's all I could remember.
You're trying to kind of piece it together in your mind.
Yeah.
As someone who's seen the movie, could you please...
Could you fill in the gaps? Because I've seen Michelle Pfeiffer look like a nerd, but then I know she's Catwoman. How does that happen? Can you explain it? Yeah.
But I remember I loved Batman Returns so much that my mom actually was like, you should probably see the first Batman. And so we went to the library, and it was one of those movies that our little small town public library had in its VHS collection. And I just remember we checked it out and I watched it, and I don't know how, as a kid, I just considered it, I was going to love it before I even watched it, because I loved Batman Returns so much, and I loved Batman so much. It would have had to have been just a completely different movie named Batman for me not to like it.
Like super boring. Or
super boring, or
would have been the only thing that would have killed it for you.
Right. So I was kind of conditioned to love the movie before I even saw it. But I did like it. Even as a kid, I really liked the Joker, which was, I don't know what I liked about him necessarily, but I did. What I loved when I watched Batman as a kid was all of the Batmobile, the gadgets, the stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then I hadn't watched it in years.
Yeah.
Like even when Nolan's stuff was coming out, you would have thought that would have gotten me to say like, let's check this out again, or let's compare and contrast, and it just never happened.
They're very different.
To say the least.
Yeah. But I did. I wanted to see. I was like, oh yeah, I can watch this now. So,
did you call your mom and dad beforehand and be like, guess what I'm watching?
You'll never tell me I can't see a movie again. No, I don't think I did. But
you could still do it. You can call them now.
I could, yeah. But no, I don't know if I wanted to. I don't think I was heady about like, I really want to see what Nolan took from Burton. I honestly watched it. I think I saw it before The Dark Knight, because I was so amped up for that I just needed to I was like, I needed to feed my Batman movie addiction. Like,
right.
I need to.
It was like kindling for your,
sure. Kindling for a fire, or methadone for an addiction. Whichever way you want to take the metaphor. So do we want to talk about what we rated it?
Sure. Yeah. Like starting in our last episode with Darjeeling Limited, we decided we were going to try a thing where, using our Letterboxd accounts, talk about
like some baseline data.
Yeah. Basically, what was it rated before you watched it, and then revealing to each other what that rating is now after the rewatch, without telling us why or why not. Okay. So I think you went first last time. So
you want me to go first again for consistency's sake? Is that what you're saying?
We can either be consistent, or we could keep it on the level.
Let's keep it on the level.
Okay.
I want to hear you.
You want to hear me? Okay. Well, here's the thing is, I must have been a little doubtful of my Batman love, even of Burton's Batman love, even when I set up my Letterboxd account, because I could have swore I gave it a pretty high rating in Letterboxd when I first set up the account, which was probably like a year or two ago.
Yeah.
I don't know how long Letterboxd has been around, but I went in there to like look at my rating to see how it moved, and I had only rated it 3 stars in Letterboxd. So I don't know why that is, if it's because I was just so uncertain of what I felt, and I knew that there were and I knew that I liked Batman Returns a little bit better than Batman, and there were certain things about Batman that on memory, I was kind of like, oh, geez, I doubt that holds up very well. So I think I put it at 3 stars. So after the rewatch, I would still rate it at 3 stars, is what I would give it.
Oh.
I would keep it exactly the same. 3 stars.
That's interesting. I was surprised. I don't know what. I rated it at 3.5 before.
Originally?
Yeah.
And we should say this is 3 out of 5.
Yes.
This is a 5-star system.
5 stars. And then after watching it, I rated it a 3 stars even.
Okay.
Which
so you knocked it back a half star.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to hear what this 3 stars means to us.
Right. It could mean we could be
like,
coming at it from
whether it's sort of like I'm disappointed, I'm giving you 3 stars, or you're like, yeah, it holds up 3 stars. Like, it's what it is.
Right,
so
glass half empty or glass half full kind of thing. But we are rating it the same thing, which is interesting.
That is interesting. But I feel maybe I'm wrong.
You don't think we're going to come at it from? You don't think we're going to see eye to eye on a lot of this stuff?
I feel like we're
Okay.
I'm interested. I'm surprised you rated it 3 stars.
What did you think I was going to rate it?
Well, maybe 4.
Okay, that I was going to
at the top.
Okay.
Like I didn't think that you'd be like you would let your childhood win out and go 5 all the way. But
well, I realize now that maybe I don't always give my childhood memories the priority that I thought I did.
Yeah.
Like, especially after talking about things like The Sandlot and Hook, you would think after listening to this many episodes of the podcast that I'm a guy who
Nate's
really...
inner child has a really loud voice.
Yeah, my inner child is going to be what I base everything off of. But, I think this shows that I don't know that that's really the case. So, okay, well, how about this? 3 stars is meaning that there's obviously some things we liked and some things we didn't like about the movie.
Yeah.
So do you maybe want to... Maybe we should start with what we liked. Maybe should we start positive?
Okay,
what we liked about the movie.
We can do that.
You tell me what you liked about it, and I'll tell you what I like about it.
Here's something that is interesting about Batman. Always, whenever anybody's trying to put it on screen, is the comic book has the very gritty side of Batman because he's a really dark character, but it's also still a comic book, and its history, especially early days, is very comic booky and cartoony with,
that's where like the bams and the pows come from the Adam West series.
Like the TV show was only the comic booky parts of it and the campy parts. And I think when this came out to Batman fans, it was like, yes, it's dark. You guys, somebody finally gets it. And I remember hearing Kevin Smith talking to the guys at Slash Film about The Dark Knight, and just they were all raving about it. Like nobody had a bad thing to say about Dark Knight, especially right after it came out. Kevin Smith compared the feelings and everything about Dark Knight to the '89 Batman, and the Slash Film guys, who are pretty young, like a few years younger than us, were like, whoa, did you just compare the Dark Knight to '89 Batman? And the way Kevin Smith explained it was that his generation only had campy Batman and they hated it. Then they got this Batman and it was like, yes, this is it. And the Slash Film guys, our generation, only had the Batman of '89. And then when Batman Begins and Dark Knight came out, we were like, yes, somebody finally gets it. So who knows? Maybe in 20 years, somebody's going to come out with like this ultra-violent, R-rated, like
just gritty as hell Batman.
Like, a nihilistic.
Nolan's
like,
Batman
Chuck
is so
Palahniuk
campy.
Written. Yeah, and we're gonna look back at Nolan, or maybe it'll go the other way. So I liked that there is a comic book feel to this. One, that this one does have the bright colors and the sort of elaborate, like, there's no way in a Christopher Nolan Batman would the Joker throw a parade with like all the balloons and all that stuff. But in the comic books he would. And so like I really liked that part of it. Though I feel like sorry to take what I liked about it and turn it negative. I feel like that stuff makes it look lower budget today. But we can talk more about that.
Yeah.
So we'll stay positive here. So I like that he really kind of dug into that comic book feel. And there are other things I like, but do you want to say something that you liked about it?
Maybe I'll go a different direction and just talk about as far as not necessarily like a detail oriented thing, but I think the first quarter of this movie is fantastic. Like the first half hour or so of this movie is just great.
Okay.
If the movie would have kept up at that pace, it probably would have been considered a great movie.
Which is interesting because that's a lot of that. He's Jack Napier, not the Joker.
Well, yeah, and that's true. And I guess we'll definitely get into more of that when we start getting into like what each character and what each actor brings to that character. And I guess I would even bring it all the way up to the scene where he actually becomes the Joker, where he peels off. And that is an iconic scene.
That
is so good.
An amazing scene.
Yes.
Really, really.
Mirror. Mirror!
You understand that the nerves were completely severed, Mr. Napier. You see what I have to work with here.
And it's been spoofed and parodied since then.
I watched it again.
Yeah.
While I was watching it, I took the timeline back to watch it again because I'm like, that is a really great reveal.
And it's a great reveal. It almost has, and this is another thing, I'll bring in another thing I kind of like about the movie, is that the movie is very referential in its sort of cinematic cues. Like Gotham City is a really well-designed city, and it has a lot of that sort of, which I would have never put this together as a kid, but watching it now, you can see, and I had read a lot about the German expressionist influence in it, but there's a lot more than that, even as far as film references go, and that part, it's like almost like the movie, depending on the scene, it's like a different genre of film. Like it's a film noir for a while, then it becomes kind of a gangster film, then it becomes sort of this, that's to me like a monster movie, like it's kind of like this Frankenstein feel to it.
Yeah.
One of the first scenes with Harvey Dent, which one thing I don't like is I don't really get why he's in the movie at all.
Yeah.
But
although I think they were setting him up to be in the series later, but
maybe. But even that has like a Citizen Kane kind of look to it at the very beginning, and there's like a Vertigo reference at the end. So like it's a very referential film, and if you're kind of a cinema geek, you can kind of pick up on that, and it's cool.
It's not only rooted in the history of Batman; it's rooted in the history of cinema.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Which is funny that, like I said in the beginning of the episode, you coming at it from more of a comic book angle and me coming at it from more of like the Batman movie angle. Yeah. We were even looking at different things on the rewatch, I think.
Yeah, and I feel like there are things I'm going to say I dislike that you're going to be like, oh,
I don't care. It doesn't bother me. So that's one thing I like. Should I just maybe keep going?
Keep that train rolling.
Yeah, I mean, okay, the score, iconic. It is one of the best scores, I think, in film. That Danny Elfman Batman theme is great, and it is memorable. And maybe you don't think it fits the movie all that well. I'm not sure what I'm getting from
parts.
Okay.
There are parts where it really is so prevalent and it sticks out so much that I didn't like it.
Yeah,
but you're right that the theme.
Definitely. The theme is what I'm more talking about. Is that it's a great theme. It's a great Batman theme.
That opening credits. Yep.
I think of all the Batmans I've seen, like I like Burton's Batmobile the best, and I like the logo the best. I like the Batman logo the best. So there are things even about the Batman aspect of Batman, like what he does
to it,
that I like the best of. That I think even beat the Nolan trilogy, which I do like. I love, and Dark Knight I love that movie. And then I think it's a well cast film. I mean, I think Michael Keaton actually is a good Batman. I think Jack Nicholson is a really good Joker. Okay. Vicky Vale, to me, I don't know, we can talk about her a little bit, but
I like Vicky
she's
Vale.
Fine. I
like Kim Basinger.
I do
don't
too,
know.
but
there was something about, I really like her.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like seek her out. Like if it's a Kim Basinger movie, yeah, I'm there. But this one, her role as Vicky Vale, I'm totally there with it. That
I like
she's
her.
that sort of. She's not even a quintessential '80s sex symbol. Like I don't feel like,
Right.
but it reminds me in part of like L.A. Confidential. And I love L.A. Confidential. So
Yes,
I don't know.
that's
like,
a great movie.
Were
you bringing some of that femme fatale sort of
a little bit
iconography
and
of
I
her
think,
in that into Batman as you watched it? Or?
I was going to say the movie invites
she doesn't
it,
seem
but
to
it
really
doesn't because
play
she's
that
not.
at all.
No, and she's not a damsel.
And I was
in
waiting for
distress.
her to actually because of
Yeah.
all the cinema references. I was like,
That's
okay,
the thing. She's not sultry. She's just That's what I like about her character so much is that she's apparently a good photographer. I don't know.
Yeah,
but like she doesn't need to be saved because she's doing her own thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I
Considering
said,
superhero movie, she's a really well written character.
Going back to me saying that the first, maybe I'll even say the first half of the movie is really good. Maybe not. I don't know. But the beginning of this movie is great. And even her interplay with the other reporter, Knox, I think is where she's the strongest, actually.
Yes.
It's where she's just actually playing a reporter.
Yeah. I
along
agree.
with Knox.
I agree. And that's probably why I'm saying I like her character. You brought up Knox, but we're talking about things we like, so we'll talk about him later.
Oh boy. That might. I'll kind of probably. I think I can kind of end it there. As far there's other things I like too, but I mean, aside from just giving you a boring list, I don't want to just keep going on and on.
I'm with you. I like the concept of this movie. I always want to see it more than I end up wanting to see it as I'm watching it. Like the idea
exactly
of this
what you mean.
movie.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a great movie. But then I'm watching it and I'm like, this movie, is not as great because everything that we've said that we like. There's like a flip side where I'm like, Elfman's theme for Batman is great. There are times where Elfman's score is really terrible.
And I would say there are times, like all the cinema references are great, but there are times when it leaves the movie kind of having this confused feeling about itself.
Right. And the set looks great. And there are moments where it's like, oh, that's perfect. I can see that went from concept drawing to actualization perfectly.
Beautiful, yeah.
And then other times where I'm like, this set is about to fall down.
Right.
They shot this on a soundstage and it looks... The art museum, is that Gotham's art museum, that one room with a balcony?
Right.
Like,
it just doesn't even feel right.
Yeah. And
again, it just kind of feels sort of disjointed, even though I like the idea of bringing in so many influences and references. There's not a real seamlessness to it at all. The other thing I should say is that I am, although it's been sort of dwindling over the years, I have considered myself a really big Tim Burton fan. Like Edward Scissorhands is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, I want you to think about that.
I know
before you say anything, because Edward Scissorhands is a great movie. Ed Wood is a great movie.
Ed Wood is great.
This movie is fine. Is a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
I would watch. I would watch this movie again.
Yeah, that's what I was also going to mention, not to sidetrack, but if this was on TV, I'd keep it on. Like I would watch it.
Batman Returns is a good movie.
Yeah.
Can you name me something later? Sweeney Todd, we both like.
Sweeney Todd, I like. I also I really like Big Fish.
Oh yeah, that barely feels like a Tim Burton.
I know.
Movie.
It's kind of when he started to sort of shift a little bit.
But he didn't follow that shift. I don't feel
he brought some. Yeah, okay. We don't need to get into a Tim Burton discussion.
But
I know what you're saying though, because it's been years since I've seen
Burton too.
Yeah.
So it's not like we can't talk about Tim Burton.
Pee-wee is
a great movie.
Yeah, Pee-wee's great.
Which I just saw for the first time.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. So I am no longer excited.
I don't know what happened
by the directing credit of Tim Burton.
I know. I kind of lost it completely, I think, when Alice in Wonderland came out and I saw it.
Oh,
and I
absolutely.
hated that movie. I hated Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was so bad.
Big Eyes was not good.
I didn't see Big Eyes. But yeah, I'm with you. I no longer feel like every time a Tim Burton movie comes out, I'm like, I got to see that. I got to see what this guy is up to. He doesn't...
Because he's not up to anything anymore. He's just... Ever since CGI entered his life...
I know.
But I don't think we've exhausted what I like about this movie, but I think it's more important that we talk about what this movie doesn't do well.
Okay.
Just because... I don't know. I don't know why I feel that way, but I do. If that's all right.
I feel like there's now whenever I talk about Batman, I'm going to always have this but feeling to my conversation. All in all, for what it was at the time, this movie was probably great.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the
Maybe.
critics were maybe mixed on it, but I think that if I had seen it and I had gotten wrapped up into it at the time, again, I was very young, but I would probably just think, hands down, bar none, this movie is a great movie at the time. Because honestly, if you try to put yourself in the place of, like Kevin Smith talks about, but even beyond that with the other controversies about this movie, like Michael Keaton being cast as Batman, Danny Elfman, who we now know is a great film composer, but at the time was a guy from Oingo Boingo.
Right.
You know, Tim Burton being the guy who did Pee-wee, that at the time the expectations were actually pretty low.
Yeah.
And that in so many ways it does exceed those expectations.
Yeah.
But I guess when it comes down to it, we don't live in that time anymore.
Right.
And right now, in this generation, our expectations for superhero movies are extremely high, if not impossibly high.
Yeah.
Because now a superhero movie is required to please both cinephiles and comic book geeks
Right.
at the same time. And I think this Batman has elements that please both camps.
Yeah.
But I think overall, it's probably more influential than it is good.
That's probably a very good way to wrap up. To
conclude the
summarize.
episode. No.
Well, to summarize, that's really great. That it's got its lingering effects, but it's also got its serious faults.
Yeah. Well, let's go into them. I mean, we might as well, because I think we're kind of beating around the bush here.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this, you're wondering, okay, so what's so wrong about this thing?
Yeah,
you know?
maybe. All right. Well, I've got kind of two groups of things wrong with it. Comic things wrong with it. Batman canon things that I dislike.
I'll hear you out on those, but you got to know I'm just not going to have much to say to that.
That's probably true.
But
And
I
then
think you
other
should share them. I think you should.
All right. Well, then should I get them out of the way?
Sure. Why not?
I think it's crazy that Batman dropped him. I think it's
Drop the Joker?
Yes.
Okay.
The first time and the second time. Batman does not kill people. That is one thing about Batman.
Okay.
Like, that is a serious... Batman won't kill people.
But he tried not to.
No, he says, I'm going to kill you.
No, not that one, but the one where he drops him and the first one.
I think it's pretty clear that he drops him. And
He tries
later
to...
the Joker says, you made me, you dropped me. And Batman doesn't like say, I tried to save you. He like...
Yeah, I don't...
I think it's... Well,
I get what you mean as far as the canon goes, but maybe, and I think in the last scene, yes, he's definitely on much more of a vengeance kick, and he's trying to kill him.
He says literally, I'm going to kill you.
I'll grant you that, but I don't think that's what's happening in the first.
Well-
When he first drops Jack Napier into the chemicals, I think he honestly...
When he first drops Jeff... Yeah.
What?
You just said when he first drops Jack Napier, he dropped him. Not like...
On accident, though.
Oh, I don't think it was accident.
Oh, I totally think it was an accident. You think he let him go?
I do.
No. I think he tries pretty hard, and then he just can't hold on to him any longer, and he falls. That's how I read it even as a kid. Like, I never thought that he intentionally dropped this guy into toxic waste or
I don't even know
chemicals
what
or
it is.
whatever it was. It was a foggy liquid in a pool,
Yeah.
which is never good in a
No,
movie.
that's true. Batman knows not to drop people into that. I bet that if we searched this on the internet, there would be lots of debate about whether or not he dropped
This
him
is
or not.
this is right up there with
Han Solo
Han-
shooting
yeah.
first. Yeah. So whatever. In any case, whether he dropped him or not, later in the movie, he is planning on killing the Joker, which is something that Batman would never do, which is sort of one thing that keeps Batman interesting. Also, Joker has never had a backstory. You've never known Joker as a person who's not the Joker. And that's part of what makes him so chilling, is that Joker has always been.
okay,
So, like, Nolan really did that
right.
without telling us that he was doing it, because you've got, like, that first time he tells the story of the scars. Comic book fans were like, oh, come on, man.
And then you realize
Don't
it's
give
just
him
a
back.
shifting
And
story.
then,
Yeah.
So that's actually a direct reference to Alan Moore's The Killing Joke, which is all about how the Joker doesn't have an identifiable backstory. So the fact that he spent so much of the movie as Jack Napier, and like they know exactly who he is and all that stuff, and then to make him the person who killed Batman's parents, that's just like
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That was unnecessary.
100%.
Didn't need to be there at all. You did not need to you wouldn't need to know who killed Bruce Wayne's parents, first of all, and second of all, it doesn't do anything to find out that it was Jack Napier who becomes the Joker. It doesn't do a single thing.
Yeah.
I guess maybe they thought it was adding more to Batman's motive to really, but does he need a motive other than the fact that this guy's terrorizing the city?
Right.
And
like the way they did it, it's almost like killing the Joker would satisfy that, and then all right, Batman's done.
Right, he doesn't need to be Batman anymore.
I did what I set out to do.
Right, I agree with you on that.
That's just ridiculous. And comic book writers since then have referenced the name Jack Napier, and it's been like a thing that comic book writers derisively address. So those are like the two glaring
comic book things.
Because
I don't
issues
have a
I have
problem
with the movie
with that at all. The whole, I mean, in fact, that's one thing that we talked about how we liked about it was that we saw him become the Joker.
I know that reveal, like that scene is great. I don't necessarily like that, whatever. And the fact that there's guns on the Batplane.
Yeah,
there's
guns on the Batmobile too. Yeah, I know.
He wouldn't kill people. So anyway, that's just so we can move on. Let me take off my nerd glasses and put on my film nerd glasses. So cinematic, like as a movie, what doesn't work, specifically the character of Knox, I think is a terrible character.
Really?
100% irritating. Obnoxious.
But he's not in it that long. He's not in it that much.
Feels like it.
Maybe, but I mean...
He is. He's in a lot. He's in the first 2/3 pretty significantly.
What is it that irritates you so much about him?
I don't know, everything. Like his lines, his jokes. I think he's an unnecessary character.
Don't be writing this stuff in the newspaper, Knox. It'll ruin your already useless reputation.
Lieutenant, every punk in this town is scared stiff. You know what they say? They say he can't be killed. They say he drinks blood.
I say you're full of shit, Knox. Oh, you can quote me on that.
Lieutenant, is there a 6-foot bat in Gotham City? And if so, is he on the police payroll? And if so, what's he pulling down after taxes?
Yeah, I guess I saw him as one of those sort of throwbacks to older films, having that reporter that's just kind of always there, and he even has that sort of Brooklyn like accent. Like it's just it's a caricature, like honestly, of a reporter from like the 20s. Like that's just how I interpreted it, and it didn't bother me at all.
He didn't add anything other than not funny comic relief.
No, all of the real comic relief in this movie comes from Jack Nicholson.
Yeah? What do you mean by that?
Like anytime you're actually laughing in this movie. Maybe you didn't laugh at all, but I did.
I didn't really.
And a lot of it was just finding Jack Nicholson's delivery of some of his lines and really going for it, actually.
Well, yeah, okay. I have in my notes, I didn't want to make a judgment call because I don't know how I feel, but I just wrote the question, what do you think of Nicholson's performance?
Oh, I like it. Now that's not to diminish like or even compare and contrast Heath Ledger's Joker or that interpretation of it.
No. I'm not comparing this to Heath Ledger or other Nicholson roles. I say in the movie, unequivocally, you like his performance?
Well, the parts I don't like are the parts that are probably more I don't like them because Prince is part of them, or like they're just, or like it's not him. It's just kind of like the setting that he's given, or like it's a very dated feel sometimes. Not anything of his fault, Like I think his performance is really good. Like I really like it.
I think there are times where I like his performance, but there are other times where I feel like Jack Nicholson's sort of like, can you believe Jack Nicholson's in a movie like this? And he's sort of not fully in it. Maybe enjoying the fact that he gets to play this sort of role, but clearly like, hey guys, I'm having a ton of fun playing this role.
Well, what do you think of Jack Nicholson in general? Movie. I mean, are you... Because I also think he's bringing a lot of Jack Nicholson into this. And if you don't like Jack Nicholson, you're not going to like this Joker. I don't think. I mean, and Jack Nicholson is a guy who gets cast because he's Jack Nicholson. Always,
I think the only time that I've actually enjoyed Jack Nicholson being Jack Nicholson is in As Good as It Gets. Like later career Jack Nicholson, like wearing sunglasses at Lakers games, Jack Nicholson is as good as it gets.
What about The Departed?
Oh, yeah. The Departed,
And that's almost, it's not the same
Departed
character, but it's a similar character. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't even thought about The Departed. But you're right. There are scenes. I almost wish there was some way that we could take like Nicholson's performance as Frank Costello and make
In The Departed, yeah.
in The Departed and make him play the Joker more like that.
Just put the makeup on
Yeah.
and say, hey, here you go.
Sort of. So Nicholson's performance, I love Jack Nicholson, 60s and 70s Jack Nicholson, like Five Easy Pieces, What Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Like, I mean, I love him.
The Shining.
The Shining, jeez,
Yes.
The Shining. And I don't know, it feels like maybe something was like unlocked in him in The Shining, because there are some really over the top moments in The Shining, and he was like,
Yeah.
oh, I can do this now.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's nothing but over the top, and I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it.
That's fine.
It's the story of the movie for me. Is that
You don't know how you feel about it?
yeah, like you can name one thing, I'll be like, yeah, and then like
think-
but what about that thing later in the movie?
Maybe
I'm
it's
like,
safe
yeah,
to
no.
say there is nothing in this movie that is perfectly executed. I don't,
Yeah,
you know,
no, I agree.
I mean, I just think in a lot of ways the movie is very confused about what it wants to be. It doesn't
Yeah.
know. It doesn't even know what setting to stick with.
No, I know
That it's
is
so-
it in the 80s or is it in the 40s?
Right. Like these guys are wearing like 80s aviator sunglasses, but they're holding Tommy guns.
Right.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
why?
And they're dancing to Prince music, but like driving a 40s car that
Right.
crashes into an 80s car.
I saw that exact same scene is so. I think I know what scene you're talking
Yeah,
about. You
yeah.
actually see that happen. You see a 40s car drive by and an 80s car drive by, and you're just
Yeah.
like, this movie doesn't know. Now, and I actually thought, I asked the question to myself, would this movie have been better if it was just a period piece? Like if they
Yeah,
could have
I
just
wonder.
set the movie in the 20s.
Yeah.
Like as a Prohibition
And that's another-
era,
maybe that's
like
something I don't like.
bootlegging Batman movie with Gotham City as
Yeah.
it is, Danny Elfman's theme as it is. Like, would it have been better?
I don't know.
The only thing you couldn't really have is all of the sort of cutting edge technology and gadgets, which does seem to be, and you'll have to speak to the comic book aspect of this, but to me, it seems like in every Batman movie, that's kind of a thing.
Yeah,
That like
that's his
Batman
thing.
has the most cutting edge technology possible, you know?
Yeah, and that might be why Knox grates on me so much, because Vicky Vale isn't a femme fatale. She's
So she's very modern.
Yeah,
And
she's
he's
a-
just kind of like this caricature of a 30s,
Yeah, like
20s
a-
to 30s reporter.
yeah. Like if it were a cartoon, when he walked in and she was in the room, like his heart would have pounded out of his chest and he would have turned into a wolf.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're right. That's something that I thought about too. And the movie just seems, and my students would love for me to use this word, bifurcated, in that like there are great things about it.
Mhm.
I'll say some things are great and really bad things about it.
Yes.
Joker's reveal, great. The fact that Joker had to have a backstory, not great.
Doesn't bother me
The
at all, but
scene-
yeah.
Whatever. The scene with the death of the anchors is so good, I think. The movie, the news anchors,
Yes.
it's
yeah.
so dark and it's so surprising.
This just in. 3 mysterious deaths at a beauty parlor in... At a beauty parlor in Gotham were discovered today.
Barry, what the hell's going on?
Becky, this is hardly the...
Becky! Kill the camera.
This is Renee on the news floor. Dane, I need some paramedics up
And-
here now.
Even then, when you see them without their makeup, it's just chilling.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really well shot. And you've got those sequences, a few sequences that are just perfect. They are killer.
Even the action sequences, some of them work better than others, but there's the one where the Batmobile is just driving through stuff exploding. It just looks awesome.
Yeah, it does.
It was nice to see something that probably cost a lot of money to do that shot.
Yeah,
and you had to do it
payoff.
right, you know, and in pre-CGI days and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. But
then you've got scenes that are awful. And that art museum scene is wall to wall
very bad.
awful.
It is bad. It's so bad.
As soon as that scene starts, it's terrible. I don't even know what to start with. It's so bad. Prince's music doesn't work.
Nope.
It's all sexual. And I know that's Prince's thing. So fine. Prince be Prince.
But it felt wedged in there. Why is it all of a sudden like
They're in like this art museum and he's talking about like all the things he's going to do to this woman. And it's like, wait a minute, did you know what movie you were writing a song for? Oh my gosh, when that one henchman like puts his hand over his head and like dances towards it. It's just
it's bad.
I don't know why they kept it in there.
And the way that one guy's like painting the
statue
to look like the Joker, but he's painting it like such a goof.
Yeah.
Like,
or they go to spray paint something and paint doesn't come out of the can. I'm like, was this the last day of shooting and they had to be out of the studio?
I don't know.
Everything is awful. The dialogue is terrible. The music, I know some people like this Prince as a Prince album, the Batman soundtrack. Like, do you remember in Shaun of the Dead when they're choosing
and he says,
to throw at the zombie and he's going to throw the Batman soundtrack and he's like, no, I like it. Some people do. Maybe if I ever listened to it outside of the movie, I'd be like, yeah, this is a good Prince.
They seem like fine Prince songs. They do not fit at all. Even in the parade, it's bad.
Did you listen to the lyrics? Were you paying attention?
I was not paying attention
because
to
it's
lyrics.
Totally like, it's just Prince explicit sexual like stuff while he's but yeah
didn't that seem to be a trend kind of in the late 80s early 90s where they would just find an artist. Seems like a studio choice. I can't imagine Tim Burton saying I want Prince in my movie. It sounds like something that Warner says. Warner's saying, hey, we're already taking some risks with you being the director, with Michael Keaton as Batman. We need something that's a little safe.
Guaranteed money on the soundtrack sales.
It's like having Vanilla Ice on Ninja Turtles Secret of the Ooze. Like, there's no reason for them to be on there other than it's to sell tickets to get people into the movie theaters.
Right.
And to sell soundtracks.
Yeah.
But bad choice. Very bad choice for the film. I think also it's confused about how much the movie even wants to take on. And maybe this is just it's a poorly edited film also. And I have no idea how much that's because the studios were telling Burton to cut stuff out, but there just seem to be things that like don't make a lot of sense even within the plot. Like even the relationship between Bruce Wayne and Vicky Vale is extremely rushed.
Oh my gosh.
All of a sudden they're just in a relationship.
And why? How
did that even happen?
Yeah. I don't know.
Like they catch each other in the mansion and Bruce Wayne is somewhat kind of like taken aback by her and Knox talking offensively about Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden they're going on a date and you don't see when that happened or where there was even an initial attraction.
Right. Yeah.
It's just all of a sudden they go on a date. They go on one date. And after that one date, they all of a sudden get to the point where Alfred's trying to tell him he needs to tell her all his secrets. You know, like
that's another. Okay. So one, the fact that they're dating gave us some prime Knox joking. Maybe I should call him Bruce Wayne. And then what you just brought up is actually a glaring comic book thing that I forgot to mention. Alfred letting anybody into the Batcave is crazy.
Yeah. And that scene doesn't even work because she finds out that he is Batman. She doesn't even seem to like, it's like, oh, you don't even ever get like a reaction or anything. It's just kind of there. I don't know how to read any of the interaction between Batman and her or Bruce Wayne and her.
Also, very little reason for the Joker to go after her.
Right. All of a sudden, he's just in love with her, but...
Because he doesn't know Bruce Wayne's Batman.
No.
And he doesn't really know or care that they're dating. But he does, because he tricks Bruce Wayne and Vicky Vale into going into the museum.
It's... Okay.
You're right.
It's a fun... It's a fun movie that's more fun the less you think about it. And the more you think about it...
the longer it's been since you've seen it.
Right. It's enough to carry you through an enjoyable movie experience.
Is it? I don't think it is.
But that's about where
I didn't enjoy watching it this time.
You didn't?
No.
I don't think it's ever boring. I think sometimes you're kind of looking at it going, what is going on? Or that doesn't fit, or that's weird. But
well, it got... The bad parts weren't...
You couldn't overlook them anymore?
No, like we're saying, the story doesn't hold together so well that the bad parts are like, well, it kept my interest because I found myself checking my phone for the time. Like,
here's another thing that I thought was really distracting to me is I know it's Gotham City, but how bad is this police force where the Joker can put on an entire parade in this city and no police can stop it? Like,
it's a good point.
Not to mention the fact that somehow the reporters are able to get there before the police, before one single police officer can get there. Yeah. Like, it just seems like the Joker gets away with a crazy amount of stuff that even a halfway functional police department would have been able to put a stop to. Like, Commissioner Gordon is such
just a doofus.
A doofus, absolutely.
Yeah. Good point. I didn't even think about
and then
that.
like they cut the bell. The bell falls down and blocks their way, and then he kind of like tries to push it.
Yeah.
And then he's like, let's just go. Like, it's like
we're just gonna watch.
Let's just watch. Like, and somehow the Joker can get a chopper, but the police can't. Like,
right.
Like, why were there no police choppers up there?
Yeah.
Or like call in
the
call in the National Guard. I don't know.
Maybe Joker lives in the 80s. Maybe there's a time travel element that got cut.
And maybe that's just, again, back then people would have just been like, hey man, chill out, it's just a movie.
Yeah.
But like now it's just unacceptable.
Yeah.
Like when you watch that, it's just like, this can't work.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Even in a comic world, this does not make logical sense.
Yeah.
You know?
And even for all its Vertigo references, that final bell tower scene just dragged.
It does.
The more I talk about it, this is like the opposite of Darjeeling Limited. The more I talk about it, the more I dislike it. I don't dislike it, the more I'm unimpressed by it.
I know what you mean, but it's still kind of just a fun movie. It's kind of a stupid movie, but it's kind of fun. I don't know. You don't seem to be as sold by the Jack Nicholson Joker character to me,
right.
And I think that's a huge selling point of the movie. And that if you don't, because honestly, I think you actually get more of the Joker in this movie than you do Batman.
Yeah, I was just
and
about
Bruce
to
Wayne.
say,
and Michael Keaton.
It's
we
almost
barely
irrelevant
even
to
talked
talk about Michael Keaton because he's not the main character. Really,
not really. He I think he does what he needs to do very well.
He does a good job. Yeah,
and I think
that
he is
scene again. Going back to the idea that there are scenes that work really well. The scene in Vicky Vale's apartment, works
one of the
really
best
well.
scenes in the movie.
Let me tell you about this guy I know, Jack. Mean kid, bad seed, hurt people.
I like him already.
Yeah, you know, the problem was he got sloppy. You know, crazy. He started to lose it. He had a head full of bad wiring, I guess. Couldn't keep it straight up here. He was the kind of guy who couldn't hear the train till it was 2 feet from him. You know what happened to this guy, Jack? Well, made mistakes. And then he had his lights out! Now you want to get nuts! Come on! Let's get nuts.
That is Keaton's best scene in the movie because he's finally allowed to do something other than brood. I remember reading something that talked about Keaton's reputation at the time was like Mr. Mom, Beetlejuice, these really high energy, outlandish characters that you almost had to know Keaton's reputation at the time to really understand how good his performance as Batman was or how effective he was because people were waiting for him to do that exploding sort of thing that Keaton was known for. And that with Keaton only playing it straight to audiences at the time, it was electric because they were...
There was this undercurrent of anticipation for something.
I wonder if that's lost now because...
Could be. I mean, I still loved Batman as a kid and I didn't have any of that.
I understand.
Any of that understanding
but
of Keaton.
we're talking about it as adults and we've got serious problems with it. And we find the movie dragging at times. And maybe for audiences, Keaton's bottled lightning that they were experiencing was sustaining part of that.
Like, I almost get the sense that they gave the movie more to Jack Nicholson because they knew they could rely on Jack Nicholson.
He got top billing, too.
Right, he did. And I almost feel like now you look at it and you're like, they should have let Keaton do a little bit more.
Stuff, The Nolan Batman movies did a lot better with Bruce Wayne so consciously putting on a persona. Hard partying sort of character, whereas Keaton's Bruce Wayne is more enigmatic and mysterious and quirky, like almost like he has Asperger's rather than like he just doesn't relate to people well. They made Bruce Wayne a pretty one-dimensional character.
In my opinion, that's kind of what Christian Bale does with the Nolan films. Like he makes him one-dimensional. He makes him a little bit more one-dimensional on the other side of the spectrum. Like he's got no sense of humor. And
you're right.
I kind of like the fact in here now. I grant you that I don't think they actually gave Keaton enough material to do much with it. But like I wish they would have. That like Michael Keaton really could have done with Bruce Wayne, kind of like what Robert Downey Jr. did with Tony Stark.
Well, then comic book glasses back on. I would have had a real problem with that.
Okay. Well, I don't mean make him kind of like this like jokester.
Yeah.
You know, like this sort of like
that
this
could have
prankster
been his
almost.
Playboy persona was more
Exactly.
jokey.
That's more what I mean. I also mean just that like when you cast a comedic actor or someone with comedic chops into a superhero role, I think they can bring this really interesting life to the character behind the mask, you know, like a lightness.
Well, it feels like we aren't sure exactly how to feel about Batman. But
Well,
we like it.
We like it, but I feel like we've kind of laid out the
We're
pros and
never
cons.
going to say it's great.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like the definition of movie junk food.
Sure.
Like, yeah, even maybe like immediately after consuming it, we're going to be like, that was a bad idea. Maybe halfway through it.
But you're going to get that craving every now and then.
you
I
are.
wouldn't be surprised if in
Absolutely.
a few years I'm going to want to watch it again.
Yeah,
So,
I know I'll see it on the shelf and be like, yeah.
Why
yeah,
not?
I'll watch that. And then I'll be like, oh, I should have just gotten Batman Returns instead.
But we also need to do what we've been wanting to kind of bring into our podcast, which is sort of talking about where our friendship is left after our discussion.
Right.
And so we've got three different levels of...
Well, three different ways to assess our friendship.
Right. And those three ways are we're either best buds, meaning we are completely in line on this, see completely eye to eye, total agreement. The other one is we have a mutual understanding, meaning that we don't necessarily agree with each other completely, but we're still on good terms.
Yeah.
And the third of which being that it's complicated, meaning that it's been an ugly discussion.
Yeah.
We're not getting anywhere. Might as well just cut it right now and cut our losses.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like this could be one where we're kind of at it.
We almost, it's the second time we're using this 3-tiered thing, but I almost feel like we're at a fourth where like we see eye to eye. I guess we're best buds on it.
Kind of.
Because I'm not mad at you.
No. I'm not going to lead this conversation.
I'm not mad at you for this.
No. And I might say
There are
we're
other
more a
things.
little bit of at a mutual understanding because although
Yeah.
we agree,
Oh boy.
although we agree on an assessment level, like we kind of feel the same way about this movie as far as whether we like it or dislike it. But I don't know that that our reasons are all that. We never really came to terms on a lot of the reasons why.
And I think
What
you
really
might-
bugs you about the movie does not bug me as much, and things
I
that
also think you might like it more than I do.
you think so.
I don't know. We'll say mutual understanding.
I think we better before it gets ugly.
And
I don't
before
want to
we
have to
go
sit
for
here and say,
another
no, I
hour.
don't. Yeah. Before I sit here and say, no, I do not like Batman. You do not say that about me.
Okay, so we're at a mutual understanding.
Yes. With that said, that's where we're leaving the episode. But if you feel very differently about this episode or about Batman or anything that we've talked about in this
Or
episode,
if you agree with
or
us,
if
you
you
can
agree,
say.
yeah, please do. We just definitely want to open up the lines of communication with our listeners.
Yeah.
And so if you're listening to this and you've got anything to add to the conversation, please do so. You can always hit us up on our website, canwestillbefriends.net.
Find us on Twitter, Facebook.
And you can always give us a phone call if you'd like. The number to give us a call and leave a message is 847-306-9532. So we want to hear from you, but why don't we go ahead and talk about what we're going to be discussing in our next episode, episode 23 of Can We Still Be Friends?
Yeah. Well, recently, this month on, I think, March 5th, the director Albert Maysles died. And he, along with his brother, were
His brother, David Maysles.
were extremely influential documentary filmmakers.
Mhm.
They shot the concert at Altamont by the Rolling Stones and the documentary Give Me Shelter. But their most famous and one of the most foundational documentaries of all time is Grey Gardens. And you've watched it sort of recently.
I had never seen it before, but I watched it semi-recently.
And several years ago, I saw part of it. So
Right.
I have not seen it for all intents and purposes. So we are going to be, in honor of Albert Maysles and also to flesh out our film knowledge, my film knowledge, because Nate's already seen it.
I have seen it, but I'd like to discuss it a little bit, actually, and it is a very foundational film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll be it'll end up being a really good conversation about what documentary film even really is, because these guys were such pioneers in the form itself. So I hope that you guys watch it with us.
Yeah.
Get it from your library. I'm sure they'll have it if they've got any bit of a decent collection, because it is such a classic documentary. And also,
really
if you have Hulu Plus, I know it's on Hulu Plus, so you can catch it there. But please watch it with us, and if you've seen it, if you have thoughts about Grey Gardens, please let us know.
Make sure though you get the documentary Grey Gardens, not the HBO movie,
right? With like Drew Barrymore
and Jessica Lange.
Not that.
Maybe fine. I haven't seen that either.
Maybe watch it as a double feature.
Sure, Grey Gardens.
Grey Gardens. Grey Gardens.
Yep. Grey Gardens, even more Grey Gardens.
That sounds like a great night.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks so much for listening to our discussion of Batman. And also, before we go, if you get a chance, it always helps us out if you would like to maybe leave us a rating on iTunes and help get the word out. Let's just help spread the word if you enjoy what you're hearing in this podcast.
Yeah.
So,
and let us just say, we really appreciate you guys as listeners, even though we may not hear from you or may not ever meet you. We really do. Thank you for listening.
Yes,
and
it's nice to know we're not just speaking out into a black hole.
Right.
Or maybe
we are.
Black hole, please.
Black hole, yeah.
Let us know what you're thinking.
Hit us up. Hit us up, Black Hole, on Twitter.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Nate and Ryan, thank you guys for the Wes Anderson Darjeeling Limited episode. I fall in the camp of those who watched it once and was left unimpressed. I'm pretty sure I watched it on a plane flight. And so that means all movies watched on plane flights should be immediately reviewed when you're not ridiculously tired and when you can actually pay attention to it. So the one thought that I had from your episode, Nate, of all people, it sounded like what you said is Darjeeling Limited left some of the style, took a lot of the set design away, took away a lot of the fluff, limited it to a few characters for character development, and then proceeded on. I just thought you were going to say this was a Wes Anderson acoustic set. He took all of what he knew how to do, he stripped it down, he went unplugged, he just went to India, he let it stand on its own 2 feet, and he let it breathe. And I really loved the podcast and am convinced that I do need to see it again. Love the show, pumped about Batman. Hopefully I'll get a reviewing in so I can join you in all of the joy of the next podcast. Thanks, fellas. Peace.